and welcome to the Mindset Michele TV show. We're so super excited for you to be joining us, and we're so super excited to welcome today's guest, the lovely Tess Julian. Hello, Tess.
Hello, Michele. Lovely to see you.
It's so wonderful to have you on the show, and thank you, Tess, for coming on today. For those of you that aren't aware or haven't met Tess before, she's this incredible, almost lifelong consultant, and she currently works for the Hargreaves Institute. She's a consultant, a director, and she's also got some really interesting other sidelines and things that she's involved with. But before we get into that, I just want to say hello, Tess. Welcome to the show, and please explain to people, how did you become like a lifelong consultant, and what is it that you're passionate about with what you do?
Oh, well, thank you, Michele, very much for having me on the show. It's a great pleasure. Now, I started my working life as a high school teacher, actually, and I was a teacher of English and drama. And then I went wandering over the world and ended up in Italy teaching English as a second language. So I've had a very strong educational background at the University of Bari. When I returned to Australia, I sort of made my way more into the vocational education sphere and had a baby, and decided to do it on my own. And so I set up my own consultancy. And I suppose then you know, I did that for, I don't know, a number of years, maybe a decade and a half. Then I thought, I want a new challenge, and I had become, the whole notion of innovation had captured my imagination, and I'd done some consulting work around that because I was very much involved in the skills for the vocational education system, and that was one of the emerging skills. They were wondering, how can we grapple with it in the vocational system? So I did that as part of a consultancy, and then I ended up working for a company called Innovation Exchange, which was about building collaborations between organisations, and particularly around science. Then after that, I met Alan Ryan from Hargreaves, and it's been a wonderfully interesting journey and I suppose if you were asked me what was the thread that linked all of those things, it's about being future oriented, about imagination, but the most important thing is it's about the people. And now I think my focus, sometimes people ask me, what do I do? And I say, I try and make people be nice to each other at work. But really it's about allowing people to be there, to bring their best selves to work and to be their best selves at work, so that it is for the success of the company or the organisation and for themselves. So that has been the sort of focus, the thing that's sort of been of interest to me the whole way through.
Wow, and thank you, because I can really see how that people bringing them best selves to work and being their best selves at work, and educating that true educator in you, all the way from when you were a school teacher at the beginning of your career through to having your own business and now working for Hargreaves Institute. That training in being a teacher, of helping people to be their best, and organisations to help them flourish in that environment. For you personally, with such a lifelong expertise of working with people, and I'm sure it's affected and influenced your life in many different ways, in work and outside of work, of course. But for you personally, what would you say then is your definition of success for you now?
Well, you know, it's interesting. I think, and I have given this some thought, and of course, being a mother as well, we think about this for our children. How do we shape our children so that they can feel successful, but also how can we help people at work? And my definition of success is really that you craft or have crafted a life that you're proud of, that you feel proud of. And that can be different for, you know, depending on who you are and what is important. For me, I feel like I have crafted a life that has given me independence. It's given me variety, and it has allowed me to do work which I feel, which I can see that I can see the impact in areas and in things that are important to me. So, but that will vary depending on who you are, of course, and what your values are and what you care about. And then I think about what I have said to my son about financial success. And I've always just said to him, be able to afford the life you choose. You know, whatever you do, if you choose a life, you have to then be able to find the way to fund that life. And, you know, and that's to me what success means.
Wow, what incredible. And thank you so much. I really love, I can hear how much you've thought about it and thought it through. And I really love the depth of what you're sharing about you've crafted that life that you're proud of. What a beautiful, beautiful way. I haven't heard it described in such a beautiful way before, but I think that really ultimately for just about everybody, you know, would be success, is crafting the life in the way that you would have liked to have crafted it.
And it involved, for me, living, as I said, living independently, but also living ethically, having good relationships, having a good friendship network, having good relationships with family, friends, clients, and a broader network, a community. So they're the things that are important to me.
And also I loved how allowed to do the work that you wanted to do and seeing the impact of that work. Again, I've heard some of these concepts described before, but the way that you're crafting the way you're describing it to yourself is just so incredibly beautiful. Thank you so much, Tess. I really love, you know, seeing the impacts in the areas that are important to you. It really speaks to success equals you living your values, having crafted the life that you want that matches your values, and even to the degree that when you're describing and talking about your son, it's not, you know, just have enough money to pay the bills. You actually, again, are describing it in a way of being able to afford to have the life that you choose. So there's nothing wrong with any of the different choices. It's about affording the life that you choose. So beautifully, beautifully put.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I think that, well, I mean, it sums it up for me, because I know people have all different sorts of criteria for judging their own lives and their success. But yeah.
And that's so true. It's about those judgments and about, you know, comparing, especially with social media now, people do a lot of comparison. So with such a beautiful start around what does success mean, I'm more than fascinated now, Tess. What are some of the suggestions and tips that you have for viewers about how they can create a successful and a positive life?
Well, I have thought about this too. I mean, we in Hargraves do a lot of work around an innovation mindset, which is, I think, very similar to a mindset for success. And the things that have struck me as being most important in that, we've got a framework which we look at the behaviours and the perspectives and things. And when I was thinking about it, I thought, what are the things that I think are the most important in terms of, you know, to not go through the whole long framework. And the first one that jumps out at me is helpfulness. I have been really impressed and influenced by the work of a man called Adam Grant, who's a professor at Wharton, in the United States. And he did fascinating research into the actual value, the economic value of helpfulness in organizations. And what he found was that organizations that had that culture of helpfulness were much more productive, they were more profitable, they worked better. And also what he found, and what we have found subsequently in doing our own research into this, is that when asked, most people are very willing to give help. You know, you want to help others if they ask you. The problem is asking for help. People are often don't feel comfortable asking for help. They feel like, oh, they're silly, or they'll work it out themselves, or they don't want to be a burden. But in fact, what I recognise is that, you know, what sets entrepreneurs, for instance, apart is that they're not afraid to ask for help. They ask for money, they ask for assistance, they ask for partnerships. They, you know, get coaches, they get mentors, they get training. You know, they ask for help. So, to me, being able to ask for help and being willing to give help in a workplace is vitally important for success, and, you know, critical.
So it's an interesting concept, this whole helpfulness, and again, I've heard it described in different ways. You know, being of service, this and that, volunteering, showing initiative. There's lots of different ways, but describing it as helpfulness, and I'll have a look at the Adam Grant research from Wharton. The thing that I do understand is that people feeling uncomfortable asking for help, that when we don't necessarily live in cultures where it's natural to ask for help. And it is funny you pulled out entrepreneurs, because they're naturally always asking for help and for, can you get me money? Can you get me connections? Can you this? Can you that? And so they're good examples of people that create a successful career, constantly asking for help from other people to keep their ideas and their businesses going. I'm fascinated when I think about how in everyday life, you know, you see people sometimes struggling in a shop at a checkout with bags or whatever, and you know, that reluctance again to ask for help, or to ask, you know, can you hold this while I pick up that, or something. It's something that I think, yeah, whether you look in life or in business, giving the help and receiving the help are things that make everybody more productive, because you're faster getting through the checkout. So if you're standing behind that person, you're helping them, that you then get served quicker. Or in an organisation, you know, that person being more successful in their job means everybody's jobs are easier to do and make the whole organisation more successful. So I think this helpfulness around as part of an innovation mindset is something that is very, very valuable.
It absolutely is. It really is. And not only that, in an organisation, it is contagious. So if you ask for help, other people ask you. And so there has to be that reciprocity as well. And of course, you don't want to become a doormat. You know, like there is a balance in both asking for help and giving help. So there are some sort of boundaries around it. But you know, in some organisations, it's fascinating that they have actual sort of practices where you, if somebody asks you for help, you make that a priority above what you have to do. You know, so that it really embeds that culture. And of course, once that happens, people, I suppose, filter when they ask for help, and not just asking for help to relieve them of their workload, but they're asking for help when they actually really need help, and you know, when it will cut down the time that they have to spend thinking about something. So yeah, so that's the other side. And of course, the next thing is the other side of helpfulness is gratitude, and thanking people appropriately when they help you. And I know when we have younger people who come out and ask for help, Alan, I remember him telling me a story about somebody he had to say to them, now, I've given you help, remember to thank me properly, you know. There's that two sides of it, you know. And also I think gratitude in that sense, in thanking, but also gratitude. I remember my mother, whenever I was sort of feeling sorry for myself, when it was not for good reason, she'd say, count your blessings, count your blessings. And I think, yes, it's true. We have so much to be grateful for, and it's so much better to focus on the things that are good in our lives rather than to dwell on the things that make you upset. So I think, you know, gratitude is actually a really, really important thing as well.
I couldn't agree more about gratitude. You know, the whole concept of keeping a gratitude journal, and each day, even if you're having the toughest of days, and work or the kids or whatever it might be doesn't seem to be going terribly well, just picking 3 things or 5 things in that journal each day to go, well, I'm grateful for the roof over my head, I'm grateful for this, I'm grateful for that, can really help to shift and reframe where you spend your focus of your energy. And it can really help people when, yes, people can be going through some very, very difficult times, or even not so difficult times, but getting caught up. I was reminded again the other day about the 2 wolves, and which of the wolves or the sides of yourself are you feeding. For those that haven't heard the wolves analogy, but it's kind of that negative self-talk. Am I feeding the, you know, I'm never going to be able to do it, and I'm never going to be able to afford that home, or I'm never this or never that? Or am I feeding the wolf that goes, you know, I fulfilled another day at work, so I got a little bit more pay towards affording my own home, and you know, which of these self-talk wolves that they talk about are you feeding, and are you focusing on? And gratitude is one of the most powerful ways of reframing and taking your brain away from, because it's very natural to have all of this negative. We seem to be quite conditioned from when we're young to have negative thoughts, and, you know, I can't do this, it's too hard, it's this, it's that, to reframe it into, well, I can do this, and if not now, then when, and why not now? And you know, just opening up those ideas through gratitude of, well, I got through my job 1 more day this week, and so I earned 1 more day's worth of salary towards getting the life that I want, getting the house what I want, whatever it might be, but it starts with the gratitude.
Aren't I lucky, you know, I've got these things, you know, and I might not have as much as somebody else. And I think, as you said earlier, you know, social media really feeds that comparison thing. And we tend to focus on the things we haven't got rather than the things we have got when we compare with people. And that's not to say that people don't have incredible hardship, and you need to be able to confront the difficulties in your life as well. I mean, it's, you know, there are times when, you know, times people face terrible things, and being able to confront those. But overall, I think gratitude is a good thing in general.
And I think that you're right. It's because I really loved, like I said at the beginning, the way that you frame some of that success. So taking away the comparisonitis that you can get from the social media side of things, looking at your life and really having that conversation around affording the life that you choose. So having the gratitude that it may be that you already have that life, and recognizing that, and recognizing what there is to be grateful for in it, as opposed to sometimes we can, and I can be guilty of this too, that's striving to achieve all the time and missing out on parts of the journey. Gratitude can actually help you to remember, well, I actually have a roof over my head, I have a nice, lovely, I love my blue jacket, you know, I have these things that I appreciate, and I'm very, very grateful for already. It's not just always these goals or these ambitions that I'm chasing.
Yeah. My other one is one that I have really learnt for myself, actually, particularly since I've been with Hargraves. And it's what we call the yes and mentality. And when in our programs, I run a program for women, and I run innovation programs and collaboration leadership. We do an exercise on yes and as opposed to yes but, because yes but gives the appearance of being open. Yes, but it'll never work here. Yes, but we tried it before, you know, those sort of responses. And actually disciplining yourself to say instead, yes, and how could we make that work here? Or yes, and tell me more about what you're thinking. Or yeah. And, you know, it's one of the most powerful things when we do the programs. We go, oh, my God, it's, you know, having an open mind, letting ideas breathe, you know, letting people's ideas sort of have a little life before you kill them off. So I think that is an incredibly important skill, and it's something you can train yourself to do. It's like I have trained myself to do it, because it's much easier to knock ideas on the head than it is to actually think about how could we actually implement that in some way, or what is good about that idea and what can we take from it and turn into something else. So I think that's a really important thing as well.
I love that, because I think that that's part of the I mean, like, people talk about it in you know, innovation sort of space, about incubation of ideas and cocooning and all of this sort of stuff. But and the use of the word "and" is very much a part of that, creating that environment for it to be able to be, you know, the start of an idea, the germ of an idea, and it's not fully formed and it's not fully this and that and costed or whatever, rather than the but and then listing out the reasons why it couldn't happen and why they've tried it before, etc. I think that, yeah, you know, having and in fact, it's funny because I still practice myself when I hear myself say but, I'll change it to and one of the funny things is when I see how much I do it, and then I go, where did I learn to keep saying but so often? Or when I'm writing and I say but, and I change it to yet, and all of those other opening words as opposed to closing down the ideas or the innovation. And I think that, you know, the people looking to create that positive mindset, these powerful, small but powerful tools around, you know, the gratitude and using yes and to open things up, so that, you know, like a child, you don't know all of the ways that may or may not work. You have no idea, but you're just opening it up to the ideas.
Yeah, I know. And it's amazing how many, you know, people who we work with go, oh, it really changed my thinking, you know, because words are powerful, words matter. And that little trick is something that you can apply in lots of different situations.
And I was going to just say that when you were talking about the helpfulness, one of the thoughts that I did have come up then was around being able to say no, because especially for women can be a bit too helpful at times to their own detriment, and their energy and their mental health, wellness in an organisation, because they're not always, but many can be too helpful.
Yes.
And I love this idea then of matching it with the, instead of yes but, I'd like to help you, yes but I've got all of this my own work to do. If you reframe that as yes, I'd love to help you, and how can we do your work as well as my work is the way where we can work together to get both sets of work done. It's a way of opening it up again.
Yeah, that's right. Another one, which I think is incredibly important, is listening and really hearing people who have different ideas, different perspectives. You know, so often you've got something, you've thought it through, you've got the solution, you've consulted your little circle of trust, and that's basically all the people who agree with you and who you have chosen because, you know, they agree with you. And you think, yep, we're ready to go. And then there's some little voice somewhere says, I think maybe you should consider this. And you go, oh, no, that so important not to disregard it, to actually listen, even if you don't end up accepting that viewpoint, listening to other people's voices and opinions and perspectives, processing it, really trying to understand it, I think is, well, it's very important for innovation because it means you're getting different perspectives, different viewpoints. So as I've said, a lot of the work I do is around diversity, inclusion, and Women at Work, a program for women. And we focus a lot on that because we all have biases. We all have our circle of trust. We all, you know, surround ourselves with people who are like us, really, and to our detriment and to the detriment of our companies. And we know that because there's a lot of evidence to show that the greater diversity, the more profitability and prosperity and thriving. So understanding what prevents us from listening to voices, other voices, and really understanding them is, you know, really knowing our own biases and working on, I mean, you're never going to, I mean, biases are shortcuts really, aren't they, to making decisions about things. You know, it's based on experience, but they can be so detrimental and they can create so many barriers in our interactions and also in the systems that we create. Because the thing that we do in the women's program, it's not about changing the women, it's about changing the systems so that we can accommodate women and make it better for everyone. That's, you know, my philosophy, basically. So I think that the diversity and inclusion thing is really important to me, really important.
And I think that that's a really important and wonderful distinction that you made around, you know, that very traditional but very masculine way of organisations operating. And so that diversity and inclusion hasn't necessarily heard different voices, let alone women's voices. And it's not necessarily women, and this is what's traditional happened, women adapting to then fit in with the boys' club or the male structure of the organisation, but the organisation adapting so that it's more inclusive of women, people from culturally diverse backgrounds, etc., etc. So I remember even working with some not-for-profits, and they were quite embarrassed. This was many years ago, but they were quite embarrassed that they didn't have their brochures in different languages. And this was a not-for-profit that dealt with people from refugee and migrant backgrounds. But it was, you know, of course, they couldn't afford to have the brochures in those days in different languages. Today, they just stick it on the website in different languages. But it's those kinds of diversity and inclusion, which thankfully, yes. And in terms of creating that successful mindset, I like your underlying point about being open to different viewpoints and listening in to what other people have to say.
Yes.
Fabulous. And Tess, if people were wanting to get hold of you, what's the best way of connecting with you?
Well, either through the Hargraves Institute or my LinkedIn page, Tess Julian. I'm always happy to connect or email.
Fabulous. And if you were to give some advice to your younger self, Tess, what do you think that a nice advice might be?
Well, the thing I was thinking about, be curious and learn, but also don't second guess yourself. And don't, the one thing I have learned, I always used to think that people in power, people in politicians, all had some special knowledge that I could never have access to. And I have realized as I've got older that that is actually not true, that they're not nearly as smart as you think. So don't always think that everybody is smarter than you. That you can do things, which is not to say that you don't have to keep learning and experiencing new things. They'd be the things I'd sort of say, I think.
I love that. Be curious and keep learning and keep growing. I think that the wonderful people like yourself that I have the privilege of meeting through the show, it's that childlike fascination to keep learning and to keep growing. Yeah. Is what makes so many people successful and really come up with some of the beautiful gems you shared today about, being able to afford the lifestyle that you choose and defining success as being, crafting the life that you want, the successful life that you want. Thank you so much for so beautifully coming on the show and sharing these insights today, Tess.
Thank you, Michelle. It's been lovely talking to you. I hope we'll meet in person one day.
I hope so too. And, many people watching might not know this, but many of the people I have the privilege of meeting through the show, I haven't actually met in person because we're in different cities, overseas, all of that. So I am very grateful for people coming on and sharing so much of their skills and their time through this show.
All right.
So thank you, Tess. So for now, though, it's the end of another show. So thank you to all the viewers and to everybody out there. From my heart to your heart, be great, be fabulous, and be you.